Tonight's topic has to do with proposals and solutions for mitigating the negative impacts of our current drought, with particular emphasis on accessing new sources of water. And so I'm really very pleased that the four gentlemen who are on this panel agreed to do so, because each of them in their own way comes at it from a somewhat unique perspective. In preparing for tonight's conversation, one of the things that I noticed when looking at similar water-related forums was, was that lots of the presentations kind of overwhelm the audience with reams and reams of data. And while I'm interested in data as much as the next person, my experience is that too much quantitative data basically suffocates one's ability to actually listen and absorb the overall message that's being imparted by the panelists. So I'm actually relieved that no one wanted to bring or have a PowerPoint presentation. With 12 years of drought behind us and the last 5 years and more predicted to come, and with rainfall over the last 5 years at 50%, our groundwater supplies are now unreliable, and our primary storage facility, Lake Casitas, is in deep decline. And if the climate and weather scientists are accurate, there is no end in sight. We're already seeing the pressures of supply and demand for our water resources, pitting competing interests against each other, with agricultural consumers versus individuals being the most obvious, of course. Our economic life our economic way of life as an agricultural community, and especially in the Ojai Valley as a tourist area, is quite vulnerable, with potentially devastating consequences if we don't come up with solutions for our need for new water, as conservation can only accomplish so much. On the more positive side, our drought has brought people together. The agricultural community, which uses upwards of 80% of our water, is working together and sharing information, not perfectly, but working together, on new strategies and technologies for maximizing water efficiency. Now, if we could just get them to change their crop profile, that would be pretty great. Individuals and communities are working together to reduce overall consumption, and our various water company authorities are exploring ways to collaborate, cost share, and provide backup to each other in areas where they are either strong or deficient. Tonight's first speaker, Richard Hages, I knew I would do it, is going to outline for us in some of the more holistic, if I can say that, proposals that are currently being considered, including, and this is just sort of one sentence, two particularly intriguing initiatives, one of which is at the state level, the Two Tunnels project, which would benefit Southern California ultimately, and if it were constructed, and the other in particular here for us in Ventura County, the Three Sisters project, with the Three Sisters being Casitas Mutual Water Company, Ventura, and the Callejas Municipal Water District. Following Richard's remarks, we're going to hear from Bert Rapp. Bert had municipal government experience, having spent time on drought-related issues for the city of Fillmore. Obviously, anything that our water authorities do is going to be affected by municipalities and politics and turf, and it'll be very complicated. So Bert has had some experience with that. I think it was probably kind of unpleasant, but from the reading, I think that there were meals of crow that were after it was done, and Bert would have every right to a little schadenfreude with the passing of a few years. Next, Russ Baggerly will offer his perspective on other ideas that are being floated for the Casitas service area, such as catchment and rainwater storage, the Hobos project, just to name a couple. And lastly, to give us a more kind of an intimate view from the local community perspective, we'll hear from Dennis Wright, who will speak about, among other things, local advocacy efforts and strategies. We'll start with Richard. A quick bio. Richard is a current member of the Ojai Valley Water Advisory Group. He has been involved in the management of water and wastewater for over 40 years and has managed the operations and maintenance of the Casitas Municipal Water District and the Camrosa District, and has served as a consultant to other local agencies. He has chaired the steering committee for the development of the Callegas Creek Watershed Plan and has authored several studies analyzing the costs and benefits of multi-million-dollar projects, including the Conejo Creek project, construction of a wastewater treatment plant, and the acquisition by the city of Ventura of a sewer service area. Beginning in 2007, Richard used his experience to assist Ojai in its effort to replace Golden State Water Company by preparing a feasibility analysis of the acquisition. His analysis ultimately became the basis for the sale of the company to Casitas. Now retired, Richard serves on the board of Ojai Flow, and most recently authored an article which I would encourage all of you, if you're really interested in the issue, entitled Cooperative Regional Approach to Improving Ventura County's Water Supply Reliability, as a member of the Ojai Valley Water Advisory Group. He and his wife have lived in the Ojai Valley for 40 years and raised their children here. He has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in public administration from Cal State University, Northridge. Richard?
Thank you. Suzanne asked me to talk a little bit about kind of the statewide water issues and how we could focus back on local issues. I'm not a real expert on state water projects, particularly currently. I've been out of it for a while. But I think, the tunnels project, or the Delta Fix that she's referring to, is just one element of what Southern California and California as a whole has been trying to do since the 1989-1992 drought. And that is try to build sustainable, reliable water supplies so that we don't suffer this feast and famine approach that we've suffered through for nearly a century. Western Ventura, or Southern California, has done a lot of things since 1992 to secure a water supply, and in fact most of Southern California has made it through this most recent drought in pretty good shape because they've built storage facilities to store state water project water when it's available, and they've entered into agreements with groundwater storage projects so they could store water in groundwater, and they've done extensive water conservation and water efficiency programs that reduced demand overall. So that they Metropolitan Water District, which serves most of the Southern California area, is fairly comfortable that they can withstand a drought like this and still maintain a constant level of service to their constituents. For Western Ventura County, we haven't done that much to take care of that problem. We had a drought in 1989-92 that was saved by a March miracle of 1993. And we were lucky and we survived that drought. But since then, it's been up and down. City of Ventura goes through constant water conservation and rationing programs, and most recently we have this 5-stage program that's been introduced in the Casitas service area. The group that I worked with, that was our goal, is to take a look at this problem as a long-term issue, not a short-term drought problem. Droughts are predictable. We know they're going to happen. So it's not an emergency. It's something we can plan for. So what could we do to make our water supply reliable and sustainable? What could we do to tell a farmer, this is how much water you're going to have year after year? To tell a business operator, this is how much water you're going to have year after year, and a homeowner, the same thing. You may not have as much as you'd like, but if you know how much you're going to have, then you can invest and plan accordingly. So we started out by trying to identify what the problem is. And it didn't take long to realize that the problem really isn't the drought. The drought is going to happen, it's happened before, and it's going to happen again. But we took a look at what the conditions were with Lake Casitas and how Lake Casitas was managed. And it's managed based on a theory of safe yield, and that is how much water can you take out of the lake over the worst recorded drought, 20-year drought period, and survive. And it's a engineering tool to tell you how much water a project like that will produce. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how much water you can take out. If your goal is to empty the lake in a 20-year drought, then this is safe yield is what you would take out every year. But that shouldn't be the goal. So then we took a look at, well, how is the planning process going to deal with this 20-year drought if it actually occurs and the lake goes dry or near dry? Well, we looked at the forecasts that they were using to project the future, and they took 1965 through 1980, and they called that the recovery period. Well, that happens to be one of the wettest periods in recorded history. And in that recovery period, the lake will fill back up. So if we have another 1969 and another 1978, we'll be lucky and the lake will fill back up. But we've had rain events like that 7 times since 1969 to 2000, somewhere in 2005. We've had 7 years like that. From 1900 to 1969, we only had 1. So what do you think the odds are that we're going to get another one real soon? Probably not very high. So if you add the problems we're dealing with climate change and the potential that this drought could last longer than 20 years, it's not a good bet to assume it's going to rain that much. So what we looked at is, well, let's take a look at a more conservative approach on how the lake will recover. So we used the period from 1962 to 1965 to 1980, the recovery period that was used in the original analysis, and we removed those big rain years and just left the moderate years. And what happens is the lake does recover somewhat, but what it does is it puts us in a position where we're perpetually in and out of various stages of drought and various stages of conservation. There's not a hope of full recovery, and certainly not a hope of sustaining a high level in the lake, unless we get these huge rainfall events. So looking at that, we thought, well, what are we going to do? I mean, that's our main supply. Well, obviously, if we change your philosophy and instead of using Lake Casitas as a primary source, use it as a source of last resort, and you use all of the other available water supplies efficiently and effectively, and you save the lake for periods when we won't have as much rain. And then we took a look at, well, how much water is out there? Well, if you look at individual authorities and individual territories, each has its strong point and weak point. But if you collectively look at Western Ventura County, we have a pretty significant amount of water. The problem with it is it's all affected by drought. It's all dependent on rainfall. Now, if you add in the element of state water, which we potentially have access to, it adds a little more water to the portfolio, but it's also affected by drought. So how do you manage these using your lake to make sure that you have enough water during those dry periods? So we took a look at that, and we took a look at how much water the city of Ventura uses and how much water all of the people in Ojai Valley use collectively in a normal year and in a dry year, and how we could effectively use all that water and reduce the amount of water we took out of Lake Casitas. And if we did that, it's called conjunctive use. It would be a conjunctive use arrangement with the city of Ventura and all of the areas in Ojai Valley. We could reduce the amount of water we take out of the lake by about 40% annually. Right now, it's about 18,200 acre feet is the planned extractions. We could reduce that to under 12,000 acre feet. And if we were to do that, we could survive another 20-year drought and a very conservative recovery period and have a constant supply of water to the community and have a lake that never falls below 100,000 acre feet. We're close to half full. The benefit of that is, well, you say, well, what are we going to do with that 100,000 acre feet? Well, that's for what we don't know is going to happen. That's for that emergency that we can't honestly plan for. If that drought extends longer than we thought, or if some other catastrophic event happens, that's our savings account. And so by working together, the city of Ventura and Casitas and all of the water users in the area, I think we could use what we have. We'd take a little bit from state water, minimize the amount we take, but take it when we need it, when they have it and we don't, and maintain a reasonable, safe level in that lake for future uses. The other element of our plan is this is really expensive. Well, fortunately, Cayugas Municipal Water District has a different problem than we have. They have a fairly sustainable water supply. What their concern is they could have a catastrophic event that severs their ties to the state water and to Metropolitan Water District. It would be a temporary problem, typically caused by an earthquake in the Santa Susana Mountains, and they believe that they would have 6 months to make repairs. And they need a supply to supply all of eastern Ventura County. So they're willing to invest in building some of the systems that we might need if we had a mutual aid agreement with them, that if that happened, we would deliver water from the lake to them during that 6-month emergency. And after it was over, they would repay it, whatever terms and conditions we negotiate. But it's kind of an ideal plan from the standpoint everybody is working together for a common purpose. You're building facilities that are much more versatile, where you can use resources when they're available and save the water in the lake. The other issue the other part of this is there are other plans out there to do other things. And those include what Russ is going to talk about, the Hobo project. There's brackish well treatment. And of course, there's a lot more we could do with conservation, permanent conservation, not the carrying buckets of water out to the plants, but permanently fixing things so we don't use as much water. But we're going to have to do that because one of the problems that we're going to be facing is even the supplies we have today are probably going to be reduced. Climate change could reduce the amount of rainfall we get. There's work being done now on sustainability analysis for various groundwater supplies. My guess those are not going to result in more water, but probably less water. There's more environmental demands for water. So all of these various competing issues will gradually reduce the amount of the total supply we have. So if we don't have a way to have all of that interconnected so that we can manage it properly, we're going to have small pockets of communities that are going to get hurt really badly while others may survive. This way we're all in it working together. So the thing that we've asked is a couple of simple first steps. You never said, take our plan and adopt it and start building it. All we want to do is have a reasonable discussion and have some analysis of the feasibility of it. But the first thing I think we can do locally before we even go beyond that is set some real goals for Lake Casitas. One, set a minimum lake elevation. We shouldn't be taking the lake down to zero. We shouldn't have a plan that looks forward to that type of thing. We should set some level where we have an emergency supply that's there. Second, we need to take a real hard look at what our actual demands are. We're in stage 3 of the water conservation and rationing program. I don't know about all of you, but it's not that terrible. I mean, we're not suffering that much. And with a few fixes, those who are suffering, we could probably remedy some of that with some, better technology and maybe a reassessment of what those allocations are. But if we knew that we didn't need to take as much water out of the lake, that would make a big difference. And then look at that through a reasonable projection of what future rainfall events are going to be like. We can't plan for the worst case. We can't say, well, it's never going to rain again. There's no way we can do that. But we can do something reasonable that has the least amount of risk. So if we know what the minimum amount of water we want to keep in the lake is, we know what our real demand for water is, and we have a reasonable projection on what kind of supplies we can expect, then we'll know, do we have enough water or not? If we don't have enough water, how much more do we need? And that's really the question that has to be answered, that so far has not been answered. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Bert Rapp. Bert currently serves as the general manager of the General River Water District. Prior to joining the Water District, he served 20 years as head of public works for the city of Fillmore. Among his many achievements, and by my reading against some very significant odds, was the successful completion of the city's state-of-the-art water recycling facility. Among its many accolades, Bert's plant, if I may be so brazen, was chosen by the Ventura County chapter of the American Public Works Association as the project of the year for 2010, and it received multiple awards for its efficiency, function, and innovation, including for the design, build, and operate contract structure. The design-build approach, heavily criticized at the time, has since been adopted by the city of Ventura, the city of Santa Paula, and has been used in Peru as an efficient method of structuring major works. Prescient when it was initially proposed, Bert's water treatment plant proposal was attacked by critics as being a Cadillac plant, with opponents pushing quite aggressively for a less expensive design and alternative funding methods and location. As we now know, had the critics prevailed, the people of Fillmore would have had to install a different type of facility at twice the capital and operating cost. So Bert's going to talk a little bit about kind of the politics of dealing with the municipal government vis-a-vis water issues, and then talk a bit about his experiences as manager of the Ventura River Water District.
Thank you. We may be facing a large project together as a community to increase our water supply and make it more sustainable. I've done multiple projects over my lifetime. The water recycling plant, of course, was probably the biggest, and it took a good 10 years from start to finish to do something like that. So I think the most important first step is to educate the public about what the need is. I think we've all kind of been self-educated the last 5 years as we watched the lake go down, and our watering habits changing and our landscapes are changing. So there's a lot of education happening right now. And then a next really big step is figuring out the alternatives. No matter what your project is, there's lots of different ways to skin the cat. So having good public involvement from the beginning on what are the concepts that could be used to solve a problem, and then getting down and getting some, I call it a 100,000 foot level, from an airplane up high, and you're looking at big concepts and putting dollar figures for the value of each alternative. And once you've got that, it gives you a general idea of the directions you can go to solve the problem. And then you start honing down and come down to the 10,000 foot level and get into more detail on the alternatives. And then once you have an idea of your top candidates for approaches to solving a problem, then you've got to get your environmental document done. And you do a detailed environmental analysis on your best alternatives. That involves even more public input, because everybody gets the chance to look at every aspect of a project, all of its environmental complications, right-of-way purchases, property purchases you have to do, the capital cost of making each alternative work. And then, once you've completed your environmental document, your top project should come out and be the project you're going to pursue. So then you've got to get to work on funding and financing. You know, you've got to figure out how you're going to get from here to there and pay for it. So as a utility, like a water district, or I was with a city at that time, so it was a sewer fee. You had grants. You had opportunity to put it before the voters, to put it on their property taxes. If it's a water rate, it can be in either the base fee, which is the mandatory amount you have to pay each month, whether you use one drop of water or not, or it can be in the usage or cost per gallon. So you have those choices you bring together, and you've got to have the public with you. Because if you're going to go out and do a vote to put it on the property tax, you got to get a 2/3 majority vote. If you're going to do it on their rates, then they have the ability to do a protest and stop the project, like what's happening in Oxnard, you know, with their sewer rates. So you've got to have the public on board, and it's best to have them on board from day one. It's really good to make sure you've studied all the alternatives and you're confident that you've chosen the best way to get the project done. And then once you've got your financing figured out and what you can get in grants, what you have to put on the rates and different approaches, then it's time to get the project done. And probably the most important thing is once they hit go, is to get in there and get it done and get finished under budget and ahead of schedule. One of the most important things I learned was that time is money. We've all heard that saying, right? When you're, like that project was a $65 million project. This project could be $100 million to a $200 million project. The more time you take, the more it's going to cost. So you figure out what's the right thing to do. You get your public support behind you. And then you get it done as quickly as you can. And you'll save money. We came in under budget on that project. We came in ahead of schedule on that project. If you dilly-dally and you waffle in the middle of things, you will cost yourself lots of money. So that's about it.
Our next speaker will be Russ Baggerly. I think just about everybody here knows him, but for those of you who do not, and this is in no particular order, so my little vitae for you, you're going to jerk around a lot of time. Russ and his wife moved to Ventura County in the early 1970s, and they have been active in the community and held a variety of public policy and political positions ever since, including, in no particular order, as a senior administrative assistant to Supervisor Maria Vander Kolk, District 2, Ventura County, and as co-campaign manager for Kevin Sweeney for U.S. Congress in the early 1990s. In addition, Russ has worked as an environmental consultant for Patagonia, helping them to fight the construction of California State University Channel Islands on the Taylor Ranch property in favor of the old Camarillo State Hospital property. Russ also worked as part of an environmental coalition to prevent the merger of Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric. It's taken decades for them to get that figured out. And as an administrative assistant for the Los Padres Forest Association Sunbow Ecology Center.
I'm getting tired listening to this. 30 years. Go ahead, Susan. I'm sorry.
His involvement in county and local affairs has also included stints as a board member of the Ormond Beach Task Force and as chairman of Citizens to Preserve the Ojai. In addition, Russ was active in working against the proposed landfill at Weldon Canyon. Among his various areas of expertise, Russ has particular knowledge of CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, which is a statute that requires state and local agencies to identify the significant environmental impacts of their actions in order to avoid or mitigate those impacts wherever feasible. This expertise has, I'm sure, been of particular value in helping him evaluate the environmental merits of various initiatives with which he has become involved, including proposals submitted to Casitas for consideration. Russ is a Vietnam veteran, having served from 1966 to 1968, and has worked as a, this is my favorite part, professional flamenco guitarist and cobbler.
So I'm uniquely qualified for the job I've got now. You can tell, right? Flamenco guitarist and a cobbler. Nevertheless, I'm pretty much self-taught. I took many university courses to give me the information that I need for many subjects. I like to think of it as air quality to zoning and everything in between. Right now I serve on the board for Casitas Municipal Water District. I serve on the board of the Ojai Valley Sanitary District. And because of the legislation that created the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency, I am the board member from Division 5 that sits on that board as well. So I like to say I deal with water from both ends of the pipe and everywhere. I don't have the education that Richard has. He really is a water expert, and I appreciate his involvement in this endeavor, and I listen to him. The Casitas Municipal Water District has, well, let me go through my little list of comparisons here. The Water Advisory Group put together a great concept. And I want to go through what I think is the concept and what Casitas State Water Project interconnection, how it compares. The Water Advisory Group, we'll call it the Three Sisters Project if you like that, it's a regional partnership with Callegas and the City of Ventura. The Casitas State Water Project interconnection is a regional partnership with Callegas, the City of Ventura, and United Water Conservation District. Now, the City of Ventura, Casitas, and United are all water contractors under the umbrella group of the Watershed Protection District that has the State Water Project contract. United has 5,000 acre feet, Casitas has 5,000 acre feet, and the City of Ventura has 10,000 acre feet available to them at some portion of water that is allocated to contractors every year, and it changes frequently. This year, I think it's about, is it 30%, Richard? It's about right, 30% of your allocation. So you don't always get what you want from the State Water Project. I have always been opposed to bringing in State Water Project until recently. Back in the 90s, there was a huge study done by both the City of Ventura and Casitas to bring in state water via a pipeline from Castaic Junction to Ventura and to Casitas. The price tag for that was well in exceedance of $100 million. It's very expensive. We have very little population in western Ventura County to be able to put that on the rates. So I had been opposed to it, but with the possibility of policy changes from the Metropolitan Water District and Callegas being able to wheel water without becoming a member of Metropolitan Water District, the project became feasible. So I changed. I agree that state water is something we should add to our portfolio, but don't think of it as a cure-all for anything. It's only a small portion of what we need. There will be, with the Water Advisory Group, the in lieu water use for the city. That would be likewise for the interconnection. Less water evaporated from the lake. It would be the same for the State Water project, not evaporated, but exported from the lake. The same with the interconnection. The in-lieu project of allowing the city of Ventura to utilize our state water that we cannot get right now, except to let the city of Ventura use it, and have the city take less water out of the lake as a purchase, would keep water in the lake and help to build it as the Three Sisters project proposes. Conservation is a way of life in California, and that's going to be the same thing for both projects. Rainfall increases in lake storage. If you don't take water out of the lake as often as the city would like, and they use our state water project instead, the lake would increase in size. As in regards to the mutual aid for Callegas and help from Casitas in a water shortage emergency, of course we would do that. Whether we had the interconnection east to west or not, we would figure out a way to, if we had to, lay pipe on the ground and provide water to our sister agency that was in need. We do have a public franchise obligation to supply water to our customers. That is firm state law, and it's based on the reasonable use doctrine. We will provide you with water one way or the other. And the public health and safety water will never change under our water efficiency and allocation program. You will have water for public health and safety. In relationship to our new water sources that we're looking for, you've heard about the horizontal bore, the HOBO, or the VERBO, the vertical bore. We've had a preliminary recon study done, and the Water Resource, WREA, and Jordan Keir, our geologist, let us know that there is plenty of water in the Matilaha Formation where we're going to be drilling into, and that the most conservative amount of water that they think we could get from the bore is about 8,000 acre-feet per year. The more liberal amount of water is around 100,000 acre-feet of water. We also have the possibility of a deep well desalter in one of the existing wells in the basin, in the Ojai Basin. It's not cheap to put a desalter on, but it would provide maybe 400 to 500 acre-feet of water that could be desalted. The brine would go into the Ojai Valley Sanitary District sewer line with a permit, so we don't have to build an ocean outfall for the brine. It would go right to the treatment plant. And the space between the well and the treatment plant is enough for dilution to keep it within the range of things that the sanitary district can clean up in the treatment plant. The State Water Project, Richard thought that over the years the average allocation was 48%, which is 2,400 acre-feet. If we add all those together, that's 10,800 to 10,900 acre-feet per year. And that's almost what we're selling to every customer in the water district right now. So we're not going to run out of water. We have plans, and we're going to utilize them. And as far as the State Water Project, where is it moving along? I have here a letter to Mr. Vujovic, who's a farmer out in the Pleasant Valley area. He's being contacted by a law firm for easements across his property. He's a big landowner and farmer out there. And that's where the pipeline is going to go from Callegas to the city of Ventura. it's working, and it's being done right now. I think that's about all I need to go through right now.
Dennis Rice. Dennis has also lived in the Ojai Valley for a bit over 40 years and has served as the director of Happy Valley School, now Besant Hills School, and as director of education at Laurel Springs School, and later through 2014 as assistant director for academics at Villanova. He is really, as of just a few moments ago, the outgoing president of the Ojai Valley Defense Fund, which, if any of you are unfamiliar with the Defense Fund, was founded in 2009 to provide financial support to groups undertaking legal action to protect the environmental quality of the Ojai Valley. So they're sort of a scary group for anyone who's thinking of mischief.
He's got a halo. Come on.
Dennis received a master's in education from the University of California at Berkeley and did postgraduate work at Harvard Graduate School of Education. In addition, he received a master's in educational leadership from Antioch University. He's noted that his upbringing, work experience, and many years living in Ojai have given him an appreciation for the culture of community, including the importance of protecting the integrity of ecosystems and the importance of advocacy to that end. So Dennis and his wife have 5 children, 3 of whom still live and work in Ojai. And his wife is a school administrator at Oak Grove School, where he currently serves on the board. So I'm hoping that Dennis will speak a little bit about some of kind of the more intimate community efforts going on here in the Ojai Valley surrounding water.
I feel like I'm here on sort of false pretenses. First of all, as of last week, I'm no longer on the board of the Ojai Valley Defense Fund. I served my term. I handed that gavel off to Peter Cantle, who knows a lot more about water than I do, and he should be up here speaking this evening, but he's fly fishing on the Madison River. Wise. And
Good on you, Peter.
And I don't know about water outside of Ojai. I've lived here since 1977. I can speak for most of the people. In fact, I can look around the room and I could pick out at least a half a dozen people who could be up here speaking much more knowledgeably than I could. As a matter of fact, if anybody here has not read Kit Stoltz's article, Kit is back here. I don't know, Todd, did you bring copies of that? He wrote a brilliant article on this very topic we're talking about tonight, and I'd really recommend it. Kit, where would they find it if they don't get a copy? The Ojai Valley Green Coalition, and it sums things up. It sums things up perfectly. Up until recently, I was also not at all in favor of bringing in state water because I've seen Chinatown, and I saw San Fernando Valley when it was actually looked more like Ojai Valley, and I know that if we had let's say an unlimited supply of water, if water was not an issue, either the developers or those people that would want to be able to change the Ojai Valley wouldn't be far behind it. So we have to be a little bit careful. But it seems to me is that we have 2 problems. We have a short-term problem and a long-term problem. And some of the things that we've talked about tonight seem like to me like they're really long-term problems. I voted for you to go on to the Casitas Water Board because I was hoping you'd get them off their butts and had them to do something because the change down there it's not even glacial, it's tectonic. It's just nothing gets done. It seems to me, that nothing's getting done. and so I feel that this is a conversation that probably should have happened several years ago. I think these ideas are wonderful. In fact, I was really impressed to be able to hear them. The question is, what do we do now to be able to address, in Kit's article, he quoted our Councilman Myrick here, said basically all of the above. And that's true, is that we need to look at what Connor Jones put out, if any of you are familiar in terms of permaculture ideas, are really valid, that we should have been doing this a long time and we should be doing it now. We should pay attention to being able to fill up our water tables as quickly as possible. But that takes a long time. It's something that you need to do, and you have to be able to do it regularly. And I think that The bore was interesting to me. I don't know what the environmental impact of it is. Meredith and I have sat and talked about it long times, and we're concerned about what it would mean to stick a long straw into somebody else's pool and how that would affect us environmentally. We've also talked about the idea of, you talked about taking the water and pumping out to the ocean. There's also some models about taking that water in the treatment plant and pumping it right back into a water system. And once you get over the ick factor of that, there's the technology is absolutely there that we can take the water that we flush down the toilet and the water that we runs down our drains and turn it right back and put it right back into the into the lake. And I don't know if anybody's talking about that. So I'm really here for as a citizen of Ojai. I think that I appreciate the agricultural community. I think that we would be a poor community without it. And yet I've felt for the last few years that the wise farmer will start be looking at maybe growing grapes or olives or something that really sucks a little bit less water out of the ground. And I think that probably that's probably happening. When I hike above the city and look down on the town, it seems to me that there are fields being cleared, and I'm not certain that those things are being replanted with citrus. So I don't have a whole lot to say about this, except that I feel that the people that have been responsible for doing this have not been moving quickly enough, and now we have a crisis on our hands that we need to really address. We need to do something now. So I would look at short-term issues and then long-term issues and get ourselves out of this mess.
I'm sure you have questions, and we're all depending on your questions.
I was going to ask Richard, how did we reduce the lake yield from 18,000 plus acre feet a year to 12,000 acre feet a year?
If you could repeat the question too,
Said, how do we reduce the annual take, basically, from Lake Casitas from 18,000 to 12,000 acre feet a year? We would do that by putting a priority on using all of our other sources first. That would be the City of Ventura's sources. There's a boundary issue with Casitas and the rest of the City of Ventura. And historically, the City of Ventura can only use the water from Casitas in West Ventura. They have a resource in the Ventura River. And because they need high-quality water for the east side, they take the water from the Ventura River and they ship it east. And they take as much water as they can to supply the demand on the west side from Lake Casitas, mostly because there's no benefit to them in storing it. They either use it or someone else will. Well, if we had a conjunctive use arrangement with the City of Ventura, the city would have a vested interest in using as much of their water resources as they could throughout the city and reserving water in Lake Casitas. And you combine that with about an average of about 5,000 acre feet a year of imported water, and that would reduce the demand on Lake Casitas.
Seems to me Andy Gilman did a nice job at the last Chautauqua about showing the graphs of where the water goes, and about 40% of the water from Lake Casitas gets pumped out of the valley, gets sold elsewhere, and then another 40% of it goes to ag, and then of the remaining 20%, most of it goes to landscaping. And so even though we're taking shorter showers and putting buckets of water out on our plants, it hardly puts a dent in anything at all. So I like the idea if we can get the people that we're selling water to get water from someplace else, that alone is going to save Ojai.
Yes, Andy.
I had a question for Russ. I was trying to understand when you were talking about the interconnected process. I think I didn't understand. Would it mean that Ventura, the City of Ventura, would get the state water and therefore not use the lake?
Initially,
Initially,
yeah.
So we wouldn't be connected to the state water. Ventura would.
Well, there's the possibility. They're looking at the pipeline from Satacoy to all the way across Ventura and maybe come up the hill a ways to hook into the Casitas system. No foreign water is ever going to go into the lake. It's just not compatible. That's a possibility. The 24-inch pipe that was initially being considered was recognized by all the parties as not adequate for anybody's needs, either moving the water east to west or west to east. So now it's being looked at as a much larger size pipeline.
I heard that there's a pipe that goes from the mission to the lake, or to Ojai. Is that true or not?
A pipeline?
Yeah.
There's a gravity line that goes from Casitas all the way down to Ramona, and then into the city system that goes west to east. But Richard talked about this boundary problem. There is a state law that says districts are not allowed to sell water outside of their district, which the city of Ventura was doing for a number of years. And we finally got a new water service agreement to stop them from exporting water as rental water that they never returned outside of the district and utilizing it for growth on the east end. And I think you complained pretty bitterly about that, Bill, didn't you? Well, we stopped that. I don't know.
Yes.
With all the water agencies that are involved, whatever plan, one, how does the process occur and who makes the decision of what the plan is when you've got so many agencies? I see where Steve Bennett has formulated this committee. I mean, would that be the
No.
decision-making body? Or how
No, the administrative process for projects is very specific. Let me try to run through it for you. The city of Ventura is in partnership with Callegas Municipal Water District, United Water Conservation District, and Casitas Municipal Water District for this project called the State Water Interconnection Project. The city of Ventura is the lead agency under the California Environmental Quality Act, and Callegas, United, and Casitas are all responsible agencies under the California Environmental Quality Act. All the planning is being taken care of by the partners, but it's through a consultant for the city of Ventura. Kennedy Jenks is doing the environmental review for the project. In March, the end of March, they had a public hearing at the city of Ventura for the notice of preparation, which is another part of the CEQA process for any development project by public agencies. So it's very complicated, and it takes a long time. The environmental impact report will probably be completed by the end of the year. It'll have a review process, and then the design phase will come along. And I don't know if that answers your question, but just because Casitas has not got hands-on duty for the design of the pipeline or the project doesn't mean that we're not involved. We are very much involved. And so is Callegas, and so is United Water Conservation District.
So as members of the public, I mean, we just sit and wait for this consultant to come up with his plan?
Go to the City of Ventura webpage and look for the State Water Project Interconnection Project.
Did you make that announcement through your publication from Casitas to all of his customers?
Yes, I've got a new what do they call it? A landing page for water security projects coming up shortly. It's taking this consultant a lot longer than I expected, and there will be a brand new web page going out for bid very shortly for Casitas. We're going to clean up that mess. Yes, ma'am.
I have one other question. Where does the Ojai Dam fit into this? I mean, if the dam came down, does that help bring any more water into the valley?
No. No, it doesn't. It has probably 300 or 400 acre feet of storage left in it. The rest of it is silt, and we have to figure out a way to bring down the dam safely so that it doesn't cause a problem. Yes.
What is being done to encourage the gorilla in the room is at
We don't do anything. It's a business decision by agriculture. It'll probably help to be regulated by water rates, but that's a private decision by a business owner. I don't think we can do anything.
Market forces will have more to do with what agriculture does than basically anything that policymakers do. I mean, that's a fungible commodity, and they're driven by the markets. Yes. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Yeah, one of the core concepts of the Water Advisory Group, if the core concept, is the shift from the safety yield analysis and management plan that comes from that to the minimum reserve approach. That's a paradigm shift in terms of management plans. If you begin with a minimum reserve compared to a safe yield analysis. You heard Mr. Aegis' presentation on that. I'm curious, the other three of you, what you think of that, the advisability of that paradigm shift in terms of how we manage the lake.
I thought that everything he said was impressive. I mean, certainly I'm not an expert on this at all, but I felt that he seems to be on the right track. I don't know.
I think that we're moving down the same path. All right, we're moving toward the state water project, water interconnection. That's been coming along for 50 some years. That's a good thing. The possibility of a pipeline east to west is in the design phase. Let's not jump the gun with major policy decisions right now. That may come along later, but a major policy decision like that needs real study and really careful thought before we do that. Not precipitously, but very carefully.
Okay. The problem with waiting to deal with that issue is you don't know how much water you need. You have to define the problem, and that's been the issue that I've tried to address with Casitas now for 4 or 5 months. First step, you define the problem, and then you start to look for solutions. And what's happening right now is City of Ventura has a very detailed written plan. Part of that plan is, under the current situation, is to take a significant amount of water from Lake Casitas by 2030. I don't think that water is going to be available to them. So it puts City of Ventura and Casitas and the service area that Casitas provides water to in a position where we really don't know what we need and what we have and what more we might need. To me, waiting to define what the yield of that lake is and how much water you need in reserve should be your number one priority before you enter into any negotiations, you enter into any issues about cost, you enter into any engineering and design things. If you don't know what you need, you are in you are in an extremely disadvantage at a bargaining table.
Yes, back there. Yes, madam.
I have a question about,
I'm wondering if the woman actually in the back behind you could.
my understanding is that there are a number of folks that believe state water should be put into Lake Casitas based on an emergency policy plan that was discussed. My understanding, and kind of paying attention to the board at Lake Casitas, they don't believe that should happen for a bunch of reasons. Russ, is that still a policy?
Are you talking about state water project being stored in Lake Casitas physically? Yeah, you can't do that because it's Northern California water. It's been disinfected. It would wreak havoc with the habitat of the freshwater system that's in the lake. And even Richard understands that. That's never going to happen.
Madam, yes.
Possibly. I don't know where. We'd have to pump it all the way to the Ojai Basin find an aquifer big enough to hold it.
The reality is you don't really need to do that. If you use your sources as they're available, you use the lake and the rainfall we get naturally as that emergency reserve. There's really not a need to take state water and store it somewhere. There's enough demand in Ventura and in the Casitas service area to use that water up when it's available and save everything else that we have. You know, it's going to be a management choice how much of that you use versus groundwater, but the benefit of it is it not only reserves the lake, but it takes the heat off of the groundwater basins, which suffer the most during droughts because people turn to that as their last resort.
Go ahead, Madam.
This question goes to Russ. Just curious, the timetable here for Line A is obviously making pieces of the commission. What is their timetable? They're vetting any other organizations for their project.
For Callegas,
For the Three Sisters, for Callegas.
Looking at other solutions.
they're in a world of hurt.
What is your timetable to get back to them according to?
Well, like I said, the process has already started. The environmental impact report outlining all of the issues related to this project will be coming out the end of this year, probably. Then the design phase. And as I stated, the east-west pipeline is already being reviewed by the consultant to make sure that it's big enough to accommodate the needs of Callegas should they have an emergency and they need water from the lake.
I think it's important for people to realize that Callegas has several alternatives for what can solve their emergency need. They're going to weigh the engineering aspects, the ability of certain alternatives to hold the water for them and have it available when they need it in an emergency. They're going to be heavily weighing the political will of their partner, whoever they choose, to cooperate with them, work with them, and make one of those alternatives happen. So it's very important that if that's a viable alternative for the Ojai Valley, that this valley, through its elected representatives at Casitas, communicate that they're on board, that they're willing to participate. Casitas has top-notch staff, excellent staff, who knows better than anybody else in this valley how Lake Casitas can be operated sustainably through a partnership or deciding whether it is the best thing to do is the Three Sisters plan or some variation thereof. But we need to make sure that if we decide that that's the way to do it, that there's no doubt that we're in there to participate.
Yes, Terrence, go ahead.
So Bert, that was lovely and incredibly well stated. However, I find it shocking that, Russ, the comment that you made about the fact that there is this work that's being done, and we're going to hear something at the end of the year, is not transparent. There's nothing that gets discussed where the public, the lay public, and we are the lay public that vote you in, really have an understanding clearly of really what the alternatives are, which you are discussing or not discussing. And so the Three Sisters plan that has been recommended, and I just kind of heard, a subtle comment that with analysis that Richard had suggested, is more or less being dismissed as really not necessarily relevant to the work that you're supposedly doing behind the curtain. And I would suggest that if you and others are to remain there, that you need to be transparent with what's going on. Because it's ridiculous that we are all sitting here in these meetings completely unaware of really what you guys truly are doing.
Yes,
You want me to respond to that?
if you want to, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I will. I think that's your opinion.
That is my opinion.
And thank you. I appreciate that. But I'll tell you what, I don't even know what the alternatives are. Those are going to be outlined in the environmental impact report. Just because Casitas is not the lead agency and we don't have hands-on knowledge of what the environmental impact report is going to do and say doesn't mean that we're not being transparent. We are taking this water shortage emergency very seriously, and we're at a bad situation ourselves because the process is being handled by the City of Ventura, which is the lead agency. Go to them and ask them what they're doing because they have the reins of this project.
I get my water from you, not Ventura. We elected you to basically protect us and our citizenry, and you're somewhat obfuscating the responsibility by basically pointing to Ventura and suggesting that we talk to Ventura.
Have you not ever turned on your tap and have water come out of it?
That's not the issue.
It is the issue. It really is. We are providing water to you, and we will continue to do that. But I can't tell you exactly where the pipeline's going to go. The negotiations for everything that has to take place haven't really. They're ongoing and they're starting slowly, but it will happen, and we will. We'll have as much information on our water security webpage as we can put our hands on from the city.
If I can add to what Russ is trying to explain, and part of my frustration also is being on the sidelines in a smaller water agency. When you embark on a large project, the elected officials adopt in a public agency their capital improvement program, which is about a 10-year program, what they have. And if you're a water agency, you do an urban water management plan. And in that, you have a written plan of what you're going to do when your water supplies run short because of drought. For example, Callegas, and their urban water management plan describes how they're going to analyze these alternatives and find an emergency supply in the event of a major earthquake. City of Ventura and their capital improvement program, they have the crosstown pipeline and the tie-in to Camarillo to connect to state water because they realize if Casitas goes dry, all their water today goes from west to east. Now they have to get the water from east to west. So they know they got to tackle that problem, so they have a capital improvement program for that project. They don't know yet where the pipe's going to go, how big it's going to go. They have a ballpark figure. They have a dedicated project in their capital improvement program. That's how the elected officials set the policy for the agency and set the direction for staff to begin tackling those projects and get them done. The Casitas Municipal Water District only has in their urban water management plan conservation, just stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, empty lake. There's no reason that the Casitas Board shouldn't have an adopted plan in their urban water management plan of something other than a dry lake and conservation, and they shouldn't have the concepts of a horizontal bore, tying into state project in partnership with other agencies, approximate costs of different alternatives, and in their plan, because that's what triggers the financial planning to get things done, the scheduling of staff and work efforts. The policy has to come from the board in documents such as that start the ball rolling.
And that's exactly what happened today at the Water Resources Committee meeting. I asked that all of the water security projects, the horizontal bore, the vertical bore, the deep well desalter, the interconnection for state water, and even the cold water formation well, those should all be put into our budget and our urban water management plan. And I hope it's going to get done.
All right, other questions? Over here.
Briefly, I would, the original charter, when this reservoir was committed to be built, did it state that it would be, the purpose of the reservoir would be to sell water?
You mean Casitas?
Casitas.
It's a storage facility.
It's a reservoir. Or was the original charter said that we will store water as we can and sell as much as we can? Because I think we've had a shift in what the original intent of that lake/reservoir was built on and to where it is today. And my question would be is how do we reverse that? How do we really get to the bare bones on this, that lake was created as a reservoir so we wouldn't be sitting in a room like this with half of our community in an uproar over the fact that we're scared to death that we're going to run out of water. I just want to know, how do we change that? How do we get back to its original intent? How do we go there?
I'm not following you, Randy. Are you saying that you think that the original intent was storage only?
He's sort of asking, but also
No.
implying
I'm
that.
saying the original charter, it was a reservoir. It was not a lake to sell, a large lake
Sure
to
it
sell
was.
water out of. Am I correct?
No, you're wrong. It was actually 60-40. 60% would go to ag and 40 would go to municipal, industrial,
Uses.
commercial users or users.
In the event of?
No, the Ventura River project, the Ventura River Municipal Water District was the precursor to Casitas. And they were a legitimate water agency under the State Water Code 72,000 for municipal water districts. They were formed to store and sell water with a water right that was perfected over time with the state board. It was there to sell water, to store and sell water. I don't know where that concept
The original intent
is.
was not as a backup source for the Ventura community, so that we did not run into this situation that we're running into today.
We have always been a backup water resource for everyone
Yes,
in
Brian.
the district.
Bert mentioned that, that some of these alternatives should have been maybe developed in an urban water management plan with budgeting and other things. Earlier you said something that was a little worrisome. You said you were waiting to hear about the alternatives until the environmental impact review has alternatives that are listed.
Right.
But obviously in that process, that's not a process of analyzing all the alternatives before you decide on what kind of project you want. That's what happens when you're looking at, wait, is there another way to do what we want to do? What is the reason? My question is why? Why has Casitas not developed these alternative ideas completely prior to waiting for an environmental impact review?
That's the process, Ryan. It's based on case law, and it's based on the changes to the guidelines for CEQA and for the statute that come along with common law. It's just what it is. Environmental impact reports are required to have a range of alternatives.
Right, but that's usually not the first time. That Casitas is not limited in discussing alternatives or figuring out specifics for alternative plans prior.
Of course not.
We can
We can offer.
Not be until then that some of these ideas would get kind of formally developed by Casitas.
Well,
To do an environmental review, you have to have a project description.
yeah.
So the project becomes before the environmental review. You're right. The alternatives that you look at in an environmental review are simply alternatives that would accomplish the same thing.
Right.
The real problem, and the reason I'm sitting here today is one reason. City of Ventura has a very detailed supply and demand analysis that they just completed for 2018 that goes through 2030. They have identified their demands, they have identified all of their supplies, and they have a list of projects to achieve those. Cayugas has a strategic plan that identifies all of the things that they need to do for water security. The Water Advisory Group has a plan. Casitas does not. That is the problem. And that's why, Russ, you've had such a hard time communicating what you're doing. You need a formal plan with analysis that people can look at and review. If you had that, this wouldn't be happening.
Okay, I agree. I'll work on it. Our general manager and the assistant general manager has been meeting with the city of Ventura and Callegas regularly on this issue. But their staff, I'm an elected official, I don't go to those.
Yes, Robin.
You know, Russ, transparency is what we need. We talked before the meeting, you said there isn't a plan, now you're saying you're working on it. All of us in here have worked on conservation. We are doing the best conservation, read Kit Stoltz's article, we are great at conservation. Working on it isn't good enough, you're an elected official, you need to say, and you have a general manager, a very extremely well-paid general manager, who should be told to get the work done. This is like a rope-a-dope routine with you, Russ, and I think all of us want to see it stop. Stand up, say what you're going to do, say when you're going to do it.
Okay.
Don't say you're going to work on it. Follow up, get it on the website, for God's sake.
Okay.
You know, on the website, you can't find out a thing. So right now, right here, my question is, when are you going to get this information out? When are you going to get the plan done that Ventura and Callegas have had for forever, and update continually? When?
Well, I don't have an answer for you, but I will find out and I'll get back to you, Robin.
Okay.
On the website, everyone wants to know.
Okay.
I'm trying to get that done.
I think
Okay.
we've exhausted this particular line of expression. Do you have a?
Yeah, I have other questions, but I'll use a less inflammatory one. I'm wondering how you increase water flow from the watershed into the lake. It mentions that here. It seems like it just goes through Coyote Creek and barely ever through the diversion canal. How do you increase water from the watershed entering into the lake? Or can you?
Richard's idea is to not have a minimum amount of water that's sold from the lake, and then
From
if
the watershed.
well, we can't make it rain. We can just
When it does rain, bringing the water, more water into the lake when it does rain.
I mean, it goes down the drains and into
Lot
the
of-
ocean,
runs to
or
the
it
ocean.
goes, you know, I mean,
well.
one little Coyote Creek into the lake.
It's Coyote Creek and Santa Ana Creek, and that's more than 50% of the water that gets into the lake. It's not Robles anymore. Only through rainfall.
And the vertical well, which would go right into the.
Yeah.
Yes, you whose hand I can see, but whose head I cannot. You there in the green shirt. Yes, you.
Yes, I would like to repeat what you said, but I want to ask again, because I have a number of neighbors and friends around town who are very concerned about all of this in the same way, and most of them seem to be for the Two Sisters plan or some kind of community development and so forth. But what they say, how can I go to a website and find out what's going on? And so I would ask that again. Is there some way we can later find out, are we going to, if we're just on Casitas Water, do we automatically get a message on our email that there's going to be a website? So they very desperately want to know when there'll be a website that they can access and find out where things are going.
I have no idea how long it's taken me to get where I am right now for the what they call the landing page. It's very difficult. You get a consultant to finally do the work, and they're dragging their feet. The request for proposal for the entire remake of the Casitas web page hasn't even started yet. It just takes forever to get things done.
All of the other organizations and so forth. Just my neighbors want to know, how can I find out what's going on?
Well, I was told 2 weeks ago that it was supposed to be done already, and it isn't showing up yet. The request for proposal to hire a consultant hasn't even been let yet for the.
Once it's completed, will it be on their invoices?
I'm trying to get the web page cleaned up as fast as I can, but
Try calling.
try
Calling
calling
the office.
calling the office.
Casitas.
Casitas.
Helen,
Wait a second. Here's the phone number: 649-2251. extension 112.
Helen, yes,
let
go
me
ahead.
let me add before you leave this conversation. Everybody needs to understand that the Casitas staff has been working night and day to make this transition work in Ojai. They've had a huge load on their plate. They have outstanding staff. They've been getting some more staff. So some of these administrative things have just added to the load. So they need to have patience. We need to have patience with them trying to get everything done. It's going to take 5 years or more to get the Ojai system up and running smoothly and the workload leveled out. So we all need to have some patience with what they're trying to get done at this time.
But it's kind of like calling your congressman. You just call the office, and if they get enough phone calls, they'll get a little fire under their tuchas. Yes, Helen, please.
Make that point. I know everybody here is very frustrated. Perhaps they could stand behind you, Russ, and say, look, you have to get this done. If you need to allocate additional funds to get it done right away, then you need to. Then you will be representing people here. Would that be helpful?
If I was the dictator of Casitas, I could get it done immediately. But that's not how the administrative process works. If things are going to be approved, 3 directors have to approve it. And we meet twice a month. If you think that's not a problem, it really is.
Go to meetings. Go to meetings. Yes, in the hat.
Russ, I want to know why you said for many years you oppose importing water.
State water.
You
State
said you
water.
wanted to delay it as long as possible. 2 years ago, you said in your urban management plan, we have no plans and no need for new facilities for water through 2040. That's your policy.
Gene, all of that has changed. Stop looking at all that old language. Everything has changed, okay?
Your actions since then, you still oppose any permanent facilities for getting water up the hill to Ojai. We've asked you to start doing.
You can't hear what I have said, obviously.
No, I hear very clearly what you say, and I'm asking you why you still oppose. You have not authorized any new facilities to pump water up the hill. That's a study y'all could do.
Thank you very much.
We've asked you to consider the Three Sisters plan and put it on the agenda, and you refuse to do that.
It's not a project yet. It's not a project. It's a concept. It's not a project. It's a concept. We're working on the first phase of what could be an initial embarkation of the Three Sisters project. And this is going to take time. Even Richard's project could take 10 years to accomplish. It's not going to be done overnight.
We met with Callegas. They think they can get it done in less than 5.
Great.
If you would get started, they're ready to get going. They said, why are you spending money drilling these Matilaha wells? You wanted to spend millions of dollars to do that. They said, why don't you spend it with us?
Okay, thank you so much.
You're not going to oppose adding water resources to our portfolio, are you, Gene?
Look, the Kier study and that you cited dealt with drilling horizontal wells into the Matilaha Formation. That's not what you're proposing to do now. You're proposing to drill a vertical well. Earlier in this meeting, you just said, oh, it'll bring 8,000 to 100,000 acre feet. If you read page 4 of the Cure study, it said a maximum of 8,000 acre feet a year.
Conservative.
Now,
A conservative.
said it could possibly be an emergency source of water. That means a limited, unknown quantity of water. That is not a secure, reliable source of water like funding imported water would be, doing the studies and getting the permanent facility.
Well, Gene, that's what we're doing.
All right, I'd like us to kind of move along with some other questions. I think, John, you have a question?
Yeah. The concept of a minimum lake level versus a maximum yield or extraction from the lake is a concept, but it's also a policy decision that at some point might be made or might not be made I realize there's an economic factor. You guys sell water, and that's what pays the overhead. It's also a political issue. But where does that conversation get held, and what is holding up? I mean, we don't need an environmental assessment for that. Is there some conversation going on in committee or at the casitas as to whether they would consider that? As Rich has pointed out, that is kind of the starting point, is to know what you're going to need in the future.
Well, Richard has said many times, even tonight, that we don't know how much water we need. I don't agree with that at all. We do know how much water we need, and we provide the water to our customers. Whether or not we're going to have a major policy change for stopping the sale of water at a certain level, that's a major policy shift that is not going to happen overnight. And I
As the
had
conversation started, I think, is the question.
The conversation needs, as Robin has pointed out to me many times, that we need, and Richard just pointed out, and so did Bert, that Casitas needs to get its act together and put together everything that I just said tonight into a plan so that you can read it and take it apart however you like. So I'll try to get that done.
Russ, my question is, what is the process by which you will begin addressing, or have you already begun to address that question, is what level do we want to keep the lake at?
We have not, and we could do that.
Okay. But doesn't that have to start at some point, and doesn't require anything else? I realize it's politically sensitive and it's economically impacts the whole operation and the ratepayers, but that seems to be kind of the essence and the time is fleeting.
Then I guess what I need to do is write a memo to our general manager, and I've done this before and I'll do it again, to request an item be put on the agenda to update our urban water management plan and put together a water security plan for the Board of Supervisors, which would include the possibility of looking at our antiquated or at least an old safe yield concept.
I think that this has been a good, we've had some good questions, some passionate questions, and I think we should probably wrap it up. So thank you all. Thank you so much to the panel, all of you. Thanks for coming.